Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable Mr. Dr. Odo Fadlueli, MA as the first supervisor, and Mrs. Mundria Yudi Pamungkas MED as a second supervisor who has guided and encouraged me to complete my final assignment. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Anisah with student ID number 1822034. I'm English Education Study Program Faculty of English Education, IKIP Siliwangi. This video is made for requirement for my final assignment for Sarjana Pendidikan degree. So, my final assignment under the title Developing Students Worksheet of the Simple Past Tense Through Scientific Approach in Teaching Writing Written Text for 8th grade students. In this research consists 5 contents. For the first one is about background of the research, the second one is about objective of the research, and the third one is about methodology, consists of instrument and data collection technique, and the fourth one is about result, and the last is about conclusion. Right, for the first one, I would like to describe about background of the research. For the ideal condition is teaching materials are indispensable for teachers and students. Educators must be able to process every material needed to facilitate the learning process and serious evaluation to acquire attitudes, knowledge, and skills in the learning process. Writing skills are challenging for students because they have little writing experience. Therefore, there is a need for teaching materials that can encourage students to be interested in learning to write. But for current condition, based on interview with English teacher, the teacher use English textbook. In the textbook, when English rings a bell, in chapter 10, there is the only material in the form of example and a few practice questions in learning. There must be supporting factor for developing student abilities, one of which is using student worksheet. A stat by A.K. Anwar in 2020 that student worksheets are teaching materials that aim to develop student abilities and skill, and in making student worksheet, an innovation is needed that make the student worksheet able to motivate students in learning. Based on the explanation above, the researchers have a purpose to developing student worksheet of the simple past tense through scientific approach in teaching writing written text for 8th grade students. For the second content is about objective of the research. The first is to figure out the process of developing student worksheet of the simple past tense through scientific approach in teaching writing written text for 8th grade students. The second is about to describe the eligibility of developing student worksheet of the simple past tense through scientific approach in teaching writing written text for 8th grade students. And the third is to investigate student responses toward developing student worksheet of the simple past tense through scientific approach in teaching writing written text for 8th grade students. And the last is to identify the challenges of developing student worksheet of the simple past tense through scientific approach in teaching writing written text for 8th grade students. And then for the third content is about research methodology. For the first is the research methodology used is research and development, which aim to develop a product. The product resulting from this research is developing student worksheet of the simple past tense through scientific approach in teaching writing written text. The stage of this research refers to Brook and Gall. As for the stage used by researchers, namely 7 stage adapted from Trisnawati and Wardani in 2020. For the first stage is about research and information collection. It is aimed to investigate and collect information from literature study. And the second stage is about planning. It is to formulating and research objective and estimate fund energy time, formulating research qualification and form of participation in this research. And the third is developing preliminary of product. It is to determine the product design to be developed. And then the next stage is about preliminary field testing. It is a limited product test. And then the next stage is about main product revision. It is to improvement of the model or design based on the limited field test. And then for the next stage is about main field testing. This step includes testing the effectiveness of the product design. And the last is operational product revision. It is to perfecting the product from field test. And then the instrument used in this research is the first is interview. It is to work conducted with English teachers to obtain information on problem in the learning process. And the second is validation sheet. It is used to determine the eligible of the developing student worksheet. And the third is questionnaire. It is to find out the student responses. And the last is field notes. It is to find out the process of developing student worksheet and to find out the obstacle of developing student worksheet. And then data analysis technique. And all data in this study use qualitative analysis technique, in which data analysis will be used to analyze the data collected from the instruments. For the analysis of the eligibility of student worksheet, if have a percentage 81 until 100%, it has a very valid criteria. And if got the percentage 61% until 80%, it has a valid criteria. And then if got the percentage 41 until 60%, it has a quite valid criteria. And then if got the percentage 21% until 40%, it got not valid criteria. And the last is if got the percentage of percent until 20%, is got the invalid criteria. And for the analysis of student responses, if got the percentage 81 until 100%, it has a very good criteria. And then if got the percentage 61% until 80%, it has a good criteria. And then if got the percentage 41 until 60%, it got the enough criteria. And then if got the percentage 21% until 40%, it has a poor criteria. And the last is if got the percentage of percent until 20%, it got very poor criteria. And then in the fourth content, it's about result. The researchers have a fourth result. For the first is the process of developing student worksheet of the simple past tense through scientific approach in teaching writing the context of 8th grade student. It has a 7 stage. For the first is research and information collection. In this stage, the researchers got the result that the curriculum used in the junior high school is using the 2030 curriculum, and the material that students have to learn or study is recontext material, which aims to improve writing skill. And in the learning process, a learning approach was needed to implement the teaching and learning process. In this product, using a scientific approach, researchers used a scientific approach adapted to the curriculum released in the English Teacher Handbook for 8th grade students. And the next stage is about planning. In this stage, the researchers found the result that designed the student worksheet with a scientific approach and then determined the research time. In the third content is about developing preliminary form of product. Researchers have designed a product with the cover contains their students' worksheet, writings, and picture relevant to the material, name, and school. In the cover, determine learning objective and basic competence, and got the suggestion from validator are simple product format, correctly structured sentence, in jumble sentence in the verb section, use verb 1, and add an underline under the verb, and change from the second verb. And then in the next stage is preliminary field testing. It is preliminary field trial were conducted on February in 2022 and March 2022. In addition, researchers conducted product trial on 21 students. And the next stage is main product revision. The researcher revised the student worksheet product based on comment from student. The revised result of the main field testing, that is adding page number. And in the main field testing, the stage was tested on 2 classes of 61 students, and the main field test stage was held for 3 meetings on March 7, 2022 and March 9, 2022. And for main field testing stage, in this stage was test on 2 classes of 61 students, and the main field test stage was held for 3 meetings on March 7 and 2022, on March 9 in 2022, and on March 14 in 2022. The last stage is about operational product revision. In this stage, the researchers revise the student worksheet product based on comment and suggestion from validator. The revision given are a description of the exercise of every question, for example, exercise 1. And then in the second result is about the eligible of developing student worksheet of the simple past tense through scientific approach in teaching writing written text for 8th grade student. From the first validator, get the percentage 86.7%, and it has a very valid criteria or category. And from the second validator, get the percentage 91.1%. It has a very valid category. And the last validator got the percentage 86.7%. It has a very valid criteria or category, and have an average percentage in 88.1%, and it has a very valid criteria. Based on the result of the three validators, they show that the student worksheet that have been developed are suitable for use, and validation value of the material expert is very valid. In the third result, it's about the student responses toward the developing student worksheet of the simple past tense through scientific approach in teaching writing the context for 8th grade student. In a small scale, get the percentage 84% and has a very good criteria. And in the large scales, get the percentage 84.2%, and it has a very good criteria. From the result of the student responses, it can be concluded that the student worksheet used is in accordance with the student's abilities. The material present is easy to understand. With the use of jumble games, students become easy to understand and make students enthusiastic in learning to write. And in the last result is about the obstacle of developing student worksheet of the simple past tense through scientific approach in teaching writing the context for 8th grade student. The researchers got the obstacle in the form of a concept to be developed that was in accordance with the needs and problem that could make students achieve the learning goals, core competencies, and basic competencies. From the obstacle faced by the researchers to get a solution from the result of the validators' discussion. One of them is using a format that can attract student attention. And then in the last contents is about conclusion. For the first conclusion is this research using research and development of the Borg and Gale model, which has been simplified into 7 stages consisting of research and information collection, planning, developing preliminary form of product, preliminary field testing, main product revision, main field testing, and operational product revision. And the second conclusion is the eligibility assessment was carried out by 3 validators, get the eligible with the criteria very valid. And in the third conclusion is student responses get the very good category and receive a response that the student worksheet used were effectively in learning in accordance with the student abilities and were able to attract student interest in learning. And in the last conclusion is the process of developing the student worksheet. There are obstacles, including not too many reference, confusing in conceptualizing the product of to make it attractive to students. But in this obstacle, there are solutions from discussion with the validators. So that's all about my final assignment, and thank you so much for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.